What I thought I would very quickly do, if you all don't mind, is I just thought, well, so what are case studies? Is a question that I sort of everyone's like assuming we know what it is. So I just thought, and you can shoot me down for this, but I thought I would have my own pop at it, right? Because we do a lot of case studies, and in actual fact, we help the Open University with some of theirs. So that's why Paul has kindly agreed to share his time this morning. But my view is that it is a story. It tends to have a beginning that is a challenge. It tends to have a middle, which is this is what we did, and it tends to have an end, which is fantastic results um, and evidence of those results. So I think it's a fairly straightforward concept, but I think for me, I've just emboldened the word they because I think, and you can tell me otherwise, but in our work, it's the voice of the customer that really matters in all of this. They tell the story because that's what other people like them want to hear. It would be a very different one if you just said, well, this is the story according to us. And because I think people can reasonably say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Um, anyway, so Paul, I've got a few questions for you, but could we just start off with an introduction, who you are, what you do at the OU, and what your role is there.
Yeah, hi Martin, hi everyone. Yes, my name's Paul. I've worked for the Open University for a number of years now. I think it's probably over 8 years now. And My current role is a B2B content marketing manager. So I'm basically creating content of all different types for businesses. That can come in a number of different forms. Yeah, the bit about the Open University. So the OU has been going for more than 55 years. It's a well-known educational brand and university. And it's the way it delivers is through supported distance learning. In the past, that would have been BBC programs in the middle of the night, maybe science experiments being sent out in the post, books, that kind of thing. But obviously, increasingly now it's more online, and that's how it's delivered. But not there are some face-to-face elements on some courses, but it's mainly online. And that teaching is underpinned by research as well of high quality. And the BBC partnership does continue as well with various co-productions. And there's often learning that's attached to those programs, and you can find out more. And that's actually one of the ways we try to recruit students is through that. So there's lots of things going off, many more than that. There's also Open Learn, which is a free platform where you can try before you buy, as it were.
Yeah.
And that's part of our social mission to provide free education. My particular area is in B2B, so that's employer relationships. So providing sponsored courses to employees mainly. We're well known as a B2C consumer brand. You'll see, adverts on the TV, cinema, that kind of thing. But we actually work with 2,700 businesses as well, and that includes Uber, IBM, Deloitte, and hundreds of local authorities and NHS trusts. So, although it's not well known, it is
Wow.
a fairly major impact across the whole UK and also internationally as well. We work with a lot of colleges as well to expand
Yeah.
what they do. So there's a big B2B element to the OU's work, and we're trying to uncover that really through thought leadership. And my role is to create content to engage businesses, so give them free resources. So that might be reports, white papers, interviews, blogs, PR activity, to really engage them, obviously capture data, and then move them through a marketing funnel,
Yeah.
sharing things like the open learn free courses, that kind of thing. And that's really where case studies come in to start to showcase what we can do in B2B. So
Okay.
that, I'd say case studies are part of that whole marketing mix to move people from interested in, they've attended an event or downloaded a report, now to sort of get them to come down the funnel and start to
Yeah.
think about working with us in a paid capacity.
Okay. That's quite a well defined role then. It's you've got the top of the funnel sort of interest,
Yeah,
and then it's case studies next. It's like this is what our work does for people,
yeah,
and then it's
absolutely.
hopefully
Yeah,
brings them
yeah,
further into the marketing funnel from
yeah.
there. Yeah.
So an example might be that they download a report, they go into our database, and then they will receive a number of emails to start to introduce them to the Open University and our work. And that's there when case studies might come in. It might even be at that point a compilation of them.
Yeah.
So if they're videos, various different customers talking about what we do, and just sort of trying to move their thinking to think, that report was good, that event was good, but could I actually work with the OU as well? And I think that's their key role of changing the direction of the interaction.
Okay. So, and there's a couple of questions. There's a question around formats that I wanted to ask, but so is there anything else you would say about how you're using them? Because it
Yeah.
seems to
So
me that they're just, is it just a case of in the marketing funnel, they have a role to play at a certain stage? Or are you using them more broadly for sort of brand awareness, or, what's the scope of the use of them?
yeah. So I think just go a bit deeper into why we do them. Um,
Mm,
I would probably argue that people don't really buy products. They, particularly in B2B, they don't just see a course and think, I would, I want to do that. They've basically got problems that they need to solve, issues and challenges, and they're looking for solutions. And I think case studies can do that better than a straightforward advert for a product. They can go a bit deeper and show we can actually solve your issues, and then they can provide an example to that would-be customer of how the OU has done that for a similar business. So if we were
yeah,
doing one for an HS trust, a lot of them have issues around finding nursing staff. There's an international shortage of nurses. They can see another NHS trust who's got exactly the same issues as them, and they're talking in the same language, one of their peers. That can be quite powerful, and they can think, well, actually, I was just working with my local university, but is there another way of doing this with the Open University with a more distance learning approach? That's that can really help, I think, uncover those issues and get into that sort of deeper sell than just a straightforward advert. And I think also people, they don't like to be sold to too much now directly. Modern customers, they do a lot of research online. If we buy a dishwasher, for example, we don't wander now into Currys and say, can you show me the best? We go on
yeah,
reviews, that kind of thing. We read read about it and compare. Same with anything that we buy of value. We want to do a lot of research, so case studies are a big part of that research,
mm,
and
mm,
help allay concerns that customers might have.
yeah,
Yeah, and just going on to how we might use them. It is quite broad. So there's obviously there's the sales element, but it is a lot wider than that. It could be, it can also help to solidify the relationship with the clients as well. It can showcase the work to them, and internally. So it has a use there. That it could help in the sector as well. Perhaps there's sector bodies that are interested in work in the digital arena or health. Maybe we have interactions with NHS. Great to show them a case study of what the OU is doing in nursing, for example. So there's that sectoral element. There can also be things like local politicians might be interested in what's happening in their area. So we can send them a case study and say, this is happening in your local NHS trust. That could be quite powerful for public affairs. So there's loads of different uses really. And then there's also there is the B2C as well. So we'll often uncover individual stories of learners who've had their lives changed by OU learning, and that could be potentially used by the employer to get new people on board to their scheme, or maybe there's a careers day or an apprenticeship week or something like that. So there's just a myriad of different uses.
It's interesting because even for private, so if it wasn't the NHS and it was maybe private companies, I think there's an interesting piece around that, around the whole community and purpose-driven kind of angle that's becoming increasingly important for people. So I think that interesting, that idea of the public affair, sort of under the public affairs domain, that actually a case study could be really useful for being put in front of, kind of people at a more local level. If you're an employer that's doing, if you're servicing an employer and helping people learn and develop new skills, for example, then that is actually could be an interesting story beyond just the sector that you're in. It just, I think that's quite an interesting point.
Yeah, particularly if you're a small business as well. We've just done a case study with help from yourselves on a small tech company. They can't compete for talent with IBM or the bigger players, but a case study about how they're offering apprenticeships, how they're supporting employees to build their careers and funding that can be quite powerful. And now they actually have a conveyor belt of apprentices coming through us, who are learning from each other. And the case study can really sort of bring that to the fore and say, actually, if you're local in this area, this is a great company to work for, and it sort of shows their impact as an ethical employer and one that offers opportunity and develops local people.
Now, can I ask a quick question about you work with private companies like Uber and a whole lot of other big multinational companies. How do you? This is a bit. Maybe I should have come to this later, but I'm just intrigued by how you get them to. How do you find people that will go on the record and talk about the things that you've helped them with? Do you have a problem with people saying yes, I'll do that for you? Because that tends to be a big challenge. It's why I think a lot of companies would love to do more case studies, but it's just really hard to get people to agree to do them for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah, I think it can depend on the format.
Okay.
So we do written ones that are just a Teams call that's kind of written up, as it were. Mm-hmm. But there are other options. There are the bigger video ones that we do. Uber was a good example there, and I think that that is a tougher sell because it's a full day. It needs staff on their side to be committed to it. It needs buy-in from managers and communications professionals. But what I would say is that you've got to share it with the client as a win-win. So what's in it for them? Why should they take one day out of their diary to do this, and then further time to liaise with learners and book rooms and parking and whatever. And you've got to really say, what's in it for them. So that could be that they will get videos to show the impact of their learning and their job internally.
Yeah,
It's great internal PR for them. It's great external PR for companies like Uber, who can show that drivers are doing degrees with the OU funded by them. That's fantastic PR. And the
yeah,
videos can bring that to life, and the case studies can bring it to life. So there are, you've just to think, when you go into those discussions, what can they get out of it? So it could be, it could be PR internal, it could be help recruiting onto apprenticeship schemes, which can be a challenge. But if you've got suddenly got a case study with somebody talking about how great their social work degree was, suddenly it's a lot
yeah,
easier. So there are a lot of things in it for them, and it's just a case of uncovering those in those early discussions and working with the account managers to say this will be a great joint project for both of us, not just for the OU.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Thank you for that. So, do you want to say anything else about formats? Because you're talking about the fact that you obviously do them in a whole range of ways. And is there something that gets, out of all of them, does someone get more traction, have more impact, more reach, or is it the fact that you do a whole range of formats that collectively adds up to something significant? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah,
Probably,
I think the written element is still important, because you've got, things like SEO and that kind of thing. It's great to have good quality content
mm,
online that can be searched.
yeah,
So that's definitely plays a role, or where time is an issue, or travel or expense, that kind of thing. We can't afford to send videographers to every case study because of,
yeah,
budgets, obviously. But we might pick a small handful each year that we do want to bring to life on video, and that can then create social clips, that kind of thing, and
yeah,
really sort of bring it to life in a different way. So certainly the video and the written is important, and then we might also do an article based off the transcripts of the interviews that we've done and the videos, and I know you've helped us with that as well. So we can sit them on a page with a supporting article that can be
mm,
searched, and always on content,
yeah,
that can be used in email as well. But it's important, I think, to think more broadly as well. So you can uncover a relationship or a case study in other ways. So that could be, you've got a panel discussion, so
yeah,
why not bring a client onto that, and weave in that relationship on the panel discussion. So recently we had National Apprenticeship Week, and we had
yeah,
Durham County Council, some representatives from that organisation. We do social work with them. They obviously took part in the discussion more
yeah,
broadly, but throughout it started to uncover that actually they work with us very successfully on social work. So you can get it into thought leadership. Maybe there's a report about skills gaps or something that we're doing, again at the back, or dotted throughout. You could do little examples of how you've worked with a well-known client that sort of encapsulates what the report's trying to talk about. So there's lots of ways you can bring them in, and they can be
yeah,
reused in many ways as well. So you might have done it a video to start with, but then it could be slotted into something. The footage could go into something else.
yeah.
So yeah, lots of ways you can weave storytelling into your wider marketing.
So you really do max out on that then. It's an opportunity, isn't it? Whether it's video, then it turns into text, and then you can, sort of atomize it, turn it
Yeah,
into smaller
I think
clips and things like
there's
this. So
sometimes a danger with thought leadership, that you can get a bit business speaky, um, and and generic, where storytelling can sometimes pull it out of that.
yeah, it's
And
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what they're talking about. That's what I could do.
yeah,
So it breaks away from the general chat about challenges, and actually gives the listener something more concrete.
yeah. Okay, so if you've got any questions, anyone, please just chuck them in the chat, or just get on the microphone. You can interrupt us. I'm sure that'll be fine. So I was going to ask you. So you're kind of talking. You sort of covered some of this, but so when you're doing this, what kind of challenges do you face then in kind of finding case studies and creating them, and how do you overcome them?
I think I think we've touched on this already in that you do need to sort of sell the benefits to the client. So that lining people up all on the same day or all on the same call isn't always easy, particularly if they've got a busy job. Like we've done ones around policing before and social work, and they're busy roles where people are out and about. So it is really important to do that. To show the benefits of getting people off the job, even if it's just for a couple of hours. So that's important. One useful tip is potentially piggybacking on an event of some sort. So something like a graduation for us is a good opportunity, or maybe there's a celebration of some apprentices that have completed. So we might use that as an opportunity because everyone's in one place. But what I would also say is it's important to have everything well organised, so particularly if it's filming. So having an itinerary in advance of who needs to be where when, sharing questions in advance because people can be quite nervous, particularly on camera. And also some advice as well about what to wear, that kind of thing. All these things that can just make it slightly easier. I think that's really important.
Right. So my final question is about impact and how you measure it, because this is probably the biggest. Well, maybe not, but I think it's a really big issue because people need. We know that from research that people say that case studies are really important for organisations in terms of the marketing funnel. But how do you measure? Are you able to measure the impact of the case studies that you produce?
It is a big challenge, obviously, for any sort of marketing that's particularly towards the top of the funnel. Because people don't usually see a case study and immediately buy. B2B sales are much more complex. There's more stakeholders in place. There could even be a tender process or procurement. So it's not an instant impulsive decision with B2B. So that makes it harder because the sales process can take months or even years. So yes, there are things like web hits and video view figures that you can look at. You could also think about building an email program as well and using them as part of that. So we have a kind of a journey for new customers who come on the database who receive a series of emails. Maybe you do emails after an event like this, and include case studies on that. So you can increase their impact by putting them in different places and in different journeys. And then you could say, well, actually, our welcome journey emails have had X number of opens, and the case studies are part of that. So there are the normal metrics, but you have to also see it in the bigger picture as well. Like, are you achieving your goals as an organization? So the OU now is the biggest supplier in England of nursing and social work apprenticeships, and we've had case studies that have shown some of those local authorities and NHS trusts that work with us, and that area has been a success, and case studies are a part of that. So you have to see that see the bigger picture as well, and not just the initial clicks and views and that kind of
Yeah,
thing. Because what with B2C, obviously volume is really important, but with B2B, it could just be one person who sees it, who's a decision maker, and that could lead to
yeah,
quite a large deal if it plays a part.
yeah,
So it's not always about huge numbers; it's about who's seeing it.
yeah. I think that's a great point about the visibility, because I don't know what everyone else thinks, but it's that idea of being able to put it in the customer journey uh, in lots of different ways. I was thinking about this the other day in terms of, you might even be starting an onboarding process with a new customer, but that is, if you've got a couple of weeks before the call, you do have an opportunity to just share a couple of case studies, just to say, in the build up to that, I just wanted you to see X, Y, and Z. Or it can be done with prospects as well. I think it's a really, I think it's a really interesting point, because I think if you one was to stand back and say, where actually do we use our case studies, I think they might be quite limited in their use. So I think that's a really good, interesting message, just to say, A, use them wherever you can, and B, in some senses, I get the feeling it's part of your job to also raise um, the idea that you have to see the bigger picture. You have to
Mm.
know that actually what we've done here has had an impact over there. It can be hard to measure it, but they're talking about the stuff that we've done, you know, and that is really, and you have to bring that to people's attention sometimes, don't you? You actually have to go and,
Yeah,
otherwise people don't know, and they might go, well, what kind of impact are we having from this?
yeah. I think sometimes as well we over rely on statistics and metrics, um, because yes, they are interesting, and it can reassure buyers that okay, 2,700 businesses are working with the OU. That's quite an impressive figure. Or
Mm,
165 NHS trusts are doing training with the OU. That can be really powerful, but it's not the same as seeing a business that someone in the role just like you, or an organisation that's just like you, talking about the OU and talking about the same problems. That's
yeah,
powerful in a different way. So we can't just have metrics. We also have to have stories and
yeah,
examples as well, and then use
yeah.
the two together.
Great point. So Haley's just asked a question, and I think this is good. So thank you for this, Haley. Um, do you have any specific questions you like to ask of your case studies?
Yeah, so if we're talking about B2B, it's all around, it goes back to like, what problem are they trying to solve? So we don't dive in, oh, why did you use BA business management? It's not about that. It's about if it was something about management training, for example, it would be uh, what are some of the management and leadership challenges that you have, or why is it difficult to find experienced managers, and is it easy to recruit them? Trying to like
Yeah,
uncover what the issue is. So next week we're going to update a case study with a local authority, and about on social work. So we'll be asking there, how easy is it to find social workers in your area? Um, is there a skill shortage? That kind of thing. And those sorts of questions can set the the context for where the OU comes in, where your brand comes in, and then you can then ask some questions about how did this relationship come about. But rather than going straight into the product and straight into the
yeah,
sale, try to set
yeah,
the context at the start. What problems did they have? Because that's really powerful, I think, and it's more applicable. It shows that you're able to identify issues, whatever they might be. It might be issues around diversity, skills gaps, reputational
yeah,
problems. It could be all sorts of all sorts of things, and it can sometimes be quite surprising what you find out, because you think that the customer has bought your product for this reason, but actually they haven't. They've done it for another reason. They might have problems with retention as well. That could be another issue. They might be working with you for ESG reasons, that kind of thing. It's quite interesting discussion that you can have.
So I think so that's interesting. So basically, the questions need to be broader, and you set the context. The thing I think I would say, Hayley, as well, is that when you do that, if you narrow down the questions to, so, you know, how's what we've done helped you? You can, that can be weirdly quite limiting, can't it? Because I think what you've just said is quite interesting. If you set the context and ask the, you know, start with the context, the challenge, you might end up finding out that there's even more information that's useful to the business, which is, they're using you, you know, you used your product or service differently to how you imagined they were going to use it. So I think basically it is a case study, but I think you ask broader questions and you get into how have we helped and what's been the outcome. But I think you might end up finding stuff out that is unexpected. And I think you should be prepared for that and not shy away from, we're just going to ask you 5 questions about, you know, how what we've done has helped you. And that's all we want to know. I think it's got to start a bit bigger.
I would add to that as well. The bigger the corporate body, the more surprising it might be, because they may be instructed to steer away from certain issues that that aren't strategically helpful for them. So it might be, we might see something as a great for diversity and inclusion and things like that, but they might actually be doing it for business reasons, or and you don't. So it can be quite interesting what they come back with. But I would definitely go into the product and the sale and the experience of your brand as well. I wouldn't,
of course,
but I just wouldn't forget that contextual piece.
Great. So Ava, thank you for your question about any tips on getting approval for case study. It's usually a different person or department to the person who you created the case study with. Now, so especially in bigger organizations and more complex ones, and you've got the kind of the corporate comms and all sorts of other stakeholders, haven't you? So how do you, got any tips on that? On approvals?
The bigger the organization, the more challenging it is. You can even I think getting comms teams on board at the start is really good, and say, when we do this, do you mind letting your comms team know it's happening, so it doesn't just land? And that they're bought in can be a really helpful tip at the start. And also, if you can get someone quite senior involved, that's great, because they will act as a sort of a sponsor of it, and they will help approval and have the right sort of contacts, because approval is one of the biggest challenges and can sometimes take a long time. But if you get ducks in a row early, that can certainly help, and try and get buy-in from comms and senior people. But the larger it gets, the more challenging it is, and you just have to remember that it's probably not their main priority as well, and you do have to be patient sometimes. But usually, eventually, it will get signed off.
So that involving someone senior right at the beginning as a kind of sponsor for it. So how do you go about doing that if they're if you haven't been dealing with them in terms of producing the case study? How do you go about saying to your customer, right, we need someone really senior who will say, yeah, this is a great idea, we really need to make this happen? How do you sort of bring that up with them without people feeling slightly like, oh, I'm good enough for this. I'm the one that needs to do this. I don't need to involve senior people.
Yeah, I think trying to think of good examples of that. So it all comes back to what's in it for them, and
Mm,
a senior person talking on camera about nurses that have completed apprenticeship in their local area and them being on the video. That's fantastic, isn't it? You know, it looks good for them. So that's why things like events where everybody's together and the senior people will be there will be a great idea. And you know, saying to that senior leader, by the way, the OU is going to turn up, they're going to do a case study, and they'd like you to be on it. That's a win-win for them. And so we have interviewed NHS trust CEOs at these sorts of events. So yeah, finding the right moment can be important, and giving people the opportunity to share their role in it, because everybody wants to do that. And so yeah, it comes back to what's in it for them. And I think also once you've got a track record of doing these things, then that can be really useful, because we can say we'd like to come and do a case study like this one, and then you can see the quality of it, and that can help sell it in as well, because you've got an example of what you've done already.
mm. I love that idea of, just saying, look, let's get the most senior person in the organisation talking about this as a part of this case study. You're killing two birds with one stone at that point, aren't you? If
Yeah,
you can land it. So I think that's a really
yeah, and
nice
it
way
can
of thinking about
solidify the
it.
whole partnership as well,
Yeah.
because it shows that you're really serious about that partnership. So yeah, like I say, next week we're going to local authority, and we went there 5 years ago. Well, hopefully that case study filming 5 years ago really embedded that relationship and showed that we were serious and we valued the partnership, and it's still going 5 years later. Now we're updating again, and hopefully it'll go for another five
Yeah.
years.
I think that's a really good other point. It's just the ability of this process, this kind of case study process, to strengthen relationships, because it is a great opportunity to do that, isn't it? As you say, it's like it should be seen as a win-win thing to do. So therefore, it's a good opportunity to work with your customer around something that's very positive, that you both want to succeed with. So, and it's sometimes in our work, that's not what that's not what's happening. So
Mhm.
actually, it is a very positive thing, or it should be. Um, yeah, thank you. So that was great, Paul. Now, mindful of time, we tend to keep these things fairly short and sweet. Unless anyone's got any other questions, I think you've covered loads of ground, Paul, and it's been really interesting to get your sort of the ideas, but also that seeing it in the big picture and then getting down into some granular tips. I think it's quite a skill to do that. So I think you've done. I think that's really good the way you've done that today. So, um, and I feel very, it's been great to have you here and to talk about the OU, and the fact that you obviously work with a lot of organisations and you do a lot of case studies. So it's been great to sort of hear how you approach it all. Okay. Thanks, Lydia. So you've definitely given some great tips. Everyone's going away with. So, all right then. We've recorded it, so I'll send around the recording, and we will also create a sort of summary of some of the great points that you've made today. So thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.